Welcome back to Mindset Mastery with Mindset Mary. Today, I have the privilege of speaking with an absolute legend, Jim Britt, a renowned entrepreneur, speaker, peak performance coach, and author of 15 best-selling books and 6 number 1 international bestsellers. Jim has shared the stage with fellow legends like Tony Robbins and the late Jim Rohn. He was named one of the world's top 20 success coaches and top 50 keynote speakers worldwide, having served nearly 2 million people in the last 4 decades. Jim, it is an absolute honor having you on the show. Welcome.
Great to be here with you, Mary. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it is my pleasure. It is my pleasure. You and I first connected over LinkedIn. I think you had sent like a really nice message, something around like, I really appreciate what you're doing to help other people. The world needs more people like you, which I thought was very, very kind.
That's nice. Thank you.
Yeah, and then as I kind of looked into your profile and I got to know you, and I was like, wow, where have I been living? Clearly under a rock. And it kind of opened the world to me about, Jim Britt. So I would love it if you could share with our viewers a little bit about who you are.
Well, it's interesting to me where I am because, a lot of people plan out the steps of how they're going to get where they're going and what they're going to do for the future in the next 5 years and 10 years and that. And I get asked all the time, they say, what's your plan for next year? And I said, I don't really have one. Where are you going to be in 5 years? I'm going, I have no clue. I don't know where I'm going to be 2 weeks from now. So I kind of take things as they go and they unfold. And
Yeah.
uh, and but I started, you know, dropping out of high school for one because I was not a very good student. Only a couple of classes I was okay in. The gym class was one. I was at a B in there. That I never made it to an A player, but and then we had a shop class, which we in the ninth grade we built a home. The class did. We went out on the site and actually built a home, and we cut every board by hand. We did the electrical, the plumbing, the concrete, everything. And and I made an A+ in that class. So I learned all the trades and didn't know but what I might be a carpenter one day or whatever. I didn't know. And so dropping out of school halfway through the 10th grade, I didn't know where I was going to go next. I had no idea. So I got a job working in a gas station, pumping gas. And I did that for about 2 years. And I got married at 18. I had my first child about a year later at 19. And still working in a gas station. And then I got I got invited to work my dream job, which was a factory up the road, working on an assembly line. I thought that was my dream job if I could get that, but I didn't have a high school diploma. But long story short, a fellow that I met pumping gas, he was a supervisor there, and he said, "Look, I can get you in as long as you can pass this kind of a dexterity test. Put round pegs in round holes and that type of thing." So I
Okay.
passed it and went to work there. And then one night, after about 4 years at this factory, a fellow that I'd met a couple of times came by and he said, "Hey, Britt," he said, "you going to work in this factory the rest of your life?" And I said, I don't know, maybe. I really didn't know.
Mhm.
And he said, "Why don't you come go to tomorrow night?" He said, your night off. He said, "Why don't you come go to this meeting with me?" He said, "I think it's something we could do to make some extra money." I said, "What is it?" He said, "I don't know. They just told me to bring somebody with me." I'm going, "Well, I'm not your guy." I said, "Because unless you can tell me what it is." He said, "Come on, man." He said, "I got to take somebody with me." And I'm going, "No, not me." He said, "I'll tell you what I'll do. If you come to the meeting with me," he said, "I'll buy the beer afterwards." And I said, "What time is the meeting?" so
I'm your
so
guy.
went for the beer, not for the meeting. But little did I know my life was going to change that night.
Wow.
Um, it was a direct sales company. The lights went on, kind of like, I can do this. And I kept repeating to myself all the way through the meeting that I can do this, I can do this. And by the end of the meeting, I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get rich doing it.
Mm.
And so anyway, long story, I joined up in the company, got started, had to borrow $4,000 to join, and which I didn't have. I had $9 in the bank. Um, and so over the next 12 months, what they taught me to do, they said, you got to go talk to people every day. He said, if you talk to 10 people a day, you'll earn a lot of money. Well, I talked to 10 a day for a year and I didn't earn any money. I made one sale out of 3,650 people. So, and the end of that year, I had 25 or I had 15 cents in my pocket. I had no way of getting any money other than what I was doing, which wasn't working. Both of my vehicles have been repoed.
Oh my
My
God.
home is in foreclosure. I had 5 days to get out by living. I'd be living on the street. I had a wife and a child and 15 cents. And I had to make a decision. What am I going to do? And I thought about going back to the factory, but my first thought was I can't even get there. I don't have a vehicle. And my second thought was, no, I'm not going back. I'm not going to quit.
Mm.
And so I decided to keep moving forward. And what turned out in the next 5 days, somebody visited me from the company, the direct sales company, taught me what I was doing wrong, what I needed to be doing.
Mm.
And that 2 hour meeting with that gentleman, I call him my mentor, but I only saw him one time, turned into over $500,000 in income the next 12 months. And the one sale that I made during the first 12 months turned into over $500,000 in income the next 12 months. So I went from 15 cents to a millionaire in 1 year because I wouldn't quit. And I totally look back and go, that's the reason, because if you don't give up,
Yeah.
if it's something, I mean, every other people were doing it. So I saw it was happening,
Mm.
but I was just missing something.
Mhm.
And part of me looks back and go, man, you were stupid, you know, to go to that extreme. But then the other part of me goes, it just taught me something that if you make a decision that doesn't allow for turning back, you know, the right time, circumstances, all of this shows up. Because I didn't plan any of it. It just kind of all unfolded over the next 5 days, which
Mhm.
I had to be out of my home. In that 5 days, I had an opportunity presented to me by the company that I sold the one product to. Um, that furnished me a vehicle. I took the opportunity, furnished me a vehicle, furnished me a 3 bedroom furnished apartment, an income of $300 a week, which is a lot of money back then, or
Yes.
not a lot, but it was income and livable, and and the opportunity to go with it. But when I look back on that, you mentioned Jim Rohn. The trainer in that company was Jim Rohn, and it's the first time I'd heard anything like that. You know, any type of personal development, and so I really hung on to him, and I think that's part of the reason I wouldn't give up. But a couple of years after that, the company went out of business, but Jim Rohn and I became good friends. And this was back, gosh, 1970 or so. And when the business folded up, a couple of years after that, Jim and I reconnected and ended up in business together. I started out promoting him, which phased into me speaking, and you know, kind of the rest is history. So I've
Wow.
been traveling the world and speaking and writing books and doing a little coaching, helping people, and it's been a great career up to this point. And people ask me when I'm going to retire, and I'm going, from what?
That's the
What I
best
do.
answer. Yeah. When you love what
So
you
that's kind of my beginning story, you know, and I look back on it and I'm going, how did a high school dropout end up, you know, doing what I'm doing?
yeah.
How did somebody that their worst subject was English, and I never thought I could write a book. It took me 10 years to decide to write my story. And once I finally finished it, which I hired somebody to help me because I didn't know how to type, I'd never had my fingers on a keyboard.
Mhm.
And she typed and I talked and finished up the book. And then, but after that, I thought I can write a book. And so here I am 14 books later, plus 2 more underway. with two fingers.
That is remarkable. That is a beautiful story. And,
Anyway, that's,
yeah,
you
as you,
know, it just proves to you that you can come from the most unfortunate circumstances and excel in life, if you really stick with it and have a vision and more importantly, a decision
Mhm,
that doesn't allow for turning back.
mhm. Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And I think like, I think that key word is like, you need to make a decision. I think
so
that's really where, like, if you look at like the origin of the word, like decide, it means to cut something off, right?
yeah,
Like you need to be able to decide, like, this is what I'm going to do. I was talking to someone the other day and I was like, I was listening to this podcast and, they were asking someone about a YouTube channel saying, like, how did you keep going when the results just didn't show, right? Like you're doing all this work, you're putting out all these videos, your subscribership is not growing, you're not building traction. And then what he said was like, well, before doing that, I had decided that I was going to commit to this for 3 years and I wasn't going to care about the metrics. I'm saying that I'm going to commit for 3 years no matter what comes of it. And I think it got me thinking that how often are we intentional about our decisions and the commitments that stem from those decisions, And I think like a lot of people say like, oh, they quit when they were 3 feet from gold. And it's like, okay, but also a lot of people quit when they're 3 feet from the start line, right? And they're just not willing to follow through.
to me, a decision eliminates things as well as creates things.
Mhm.
And a decision is if you envision a full circle, let's say that's a decision that doesn't allow for anything less. But most people make a decision with a little opening in that circle. And
Yes.
that's their escape route. That's their excuse. That's why it didn't work. That's why they couldn't follow through.
Yep.
That's why the economy was bad, or that's why, they make up all kinds of things in their mind, which is interesting to me because all of those made up things are fears that they've made up. So we make up a story about what we want to accomplish in our life. Then we make up a fear to keep us from getting it. And so it's really amazing that we decide we want something, but we make up a story to keep us from getting it, which is fear. And and I know where that comes from. It and why people do it. You've heard of the 80-20 rule, right?
The 80-20 rule. Well, the 80-20 rule that I know is that like 80% of our results comes from the 20% that we do.
Yes, that's it. And
Oh,
it's got a name called the Paleo principle or something
yes,
like that.
yes,
I forget. But
yeah.
anyway, 35 years ago, it was being talked about quite a bit, that salespeople, real estate, whatever kind of sales, 20% produce 80% of the results.
Love.
And the bottom line is the 80% don't follow through.
Mhm.
They,
Yes,
they, they make a decision, but it's not a firm decision, so they don't follow through.
right.
So I discovered what caused this because I was looking at it one day about 35 years ago and I'm going, what the heck is wrong with the 80%? Why would you go join the gym to get your body fit and quit in 30 days? Why would you go on a weight loss program and not follow through? Why would you go to an event and spend $1,000 and then buy another program for $1,000, put it on the shelf and never use it? Why would you do those things? Why would you make a decision to double your sales this year and double your income and you end up at the end of the year with the same thing you had last year? I'm going, that's weird. That's just weird. Why would somebody do that? I mean, somebody in their right mind, why would they do that? And I thought about it for a while and I thought, what causes that? Because that's a big problem if I could come up with a solution for it. And I did that day. Um, a reason for it and a solution. It's easy to be self-aware, but self-awareness doesn't do anything unless you act on it in some way. You can be aware that you're broke, overweight, unhealthy, bad relationship, whatever. You can be aware of that, but what does that do? Unless you've got some way to overcome whatever the negative side effects of that is. So I thought about, well, we all get programmed to be who we are. And a lot of programming is not unlike programming a robot in today's world. You know, you see a robot. I know Elon Musk has in his factory over in Nevada, he has robots roaming the factory, watching humans do things so that they can learn exactly how to do it. So, and our parents start the process. They teach us to walk and talk and, you know, how to cross the street, how to ride a bicycle and how to swim and how to, you know, put on your clothes, things like that. And kids are inquisitive anyway, you know, at a young age. They want to learn these things. That's why, you know, up until 5 or 6 years old, they don't have any responsibilities except to have fun, be joyful, and learn new things. And they, you know, they come up to you. I have a little grandson who's 3 years old, and every time I see him, he's going, "Well, why is this? Or how come this? Or how do I do this? Or why do you do that?" Or, you know, so, but they're learning and programming themselves. So some of it's productive, some of it may not be productive. So I thought, okay, well, once you repeat those things like walking or talking or putting on your clothes, you do it over and over and over, and you perfect it, and it becomes a habit pattern. Mm-hmm. And it's second nature to you. You never have to think about it again. You know, yeah, if you go out walking, you don't have to think about walk. You have to be aware of your surroundings, just like you get in your car and drive it. You've been mechanically programmed to drive that car. You don't think about the mechanics of it once you learn it. You have to be aware of your surroundings. Get up and put on your clothes, put on a pair of pants. I would venture to say everybody in the world puts the same leg in first every single time. Mm-hmm. Because that's how they learn to do it. So I thought, well, that's pretty cool. It'd be hard to live our lives without those habits. And we may have 100 of them. I don't know how many, but we have multiple ones for sure. Then I thought, well, how do we end up where we are? And my conclusion was you end up where you are based on what you believe to be true in the past that you acted on. Pretty simple. Call a law of cause and effect. I thought, well, how do you remember what you did in the past? And my conclusion to that was it'd be impossible to remember everything because we literally have millions of files in our brain. If your eyes are open right now, you're recording, not only on Zoom, but you're recording into your brain. If you turn your head and look the other way, you just recorded that. If you listen to the sound, you recorded that. If a bird chirps outside, you're recording that. All of that stuff is recorded in your brain. That's a miracle. I don't know how it works, you know, because we got so much stuff in there. Do we ever reach capacity? Maybe we do. I don't know. But there's a lot in there. So it'd be impossible to remember everything, but you do remember the highlights, I bet, you know, quickly. Like if I asked, you know, what's the most beautiful vacation you ever took or most exciting experience you've ever had, or if you've had a child, you'd remember when that child was born, or if you had your first kiss, you'd remember that, you know. So those things are at the surface because they were emotional experiences. But a lot of things in our brain are not, you know, just the fact that I, you know, look at my printer across the room, that just got recorded. But it's not emotional experience. It's just data.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And we may retrieve that data. If somebody says, you know, hey, do you know how to do a certain thing? Instantly you search your brain, just like Google searching. And you either say, yeah, I know how to do that, or you go, no, I don't. Or I've seen somebody do it. Anything related to it, just like Google. It's exactly like Google. So we're Googling our brain. So anyway, the more I looked at that, I thought, well, okay, that's the positive side. Let's look at the negative side. And that's when everything changed. Because when you're a child, up until 6 years old, you don't have responsibilities. You just want to be happy and joyful. And anything that interferes with that, you learn to suppress it. some kids grow up in orphanages, they've been abandoned, lost their parents, foster homes, all this. I can't even imagine what that would be like. But some kids grow up that way. And some are in abusive situations. They get verbally or physically abused. They grow up in households that are disruptive. They have an alcoholic parent. They have a drug abuser. They have one parent that abuses the other. All kinds of things happen to children, and they're the real victims. But when they see these things, because their whole makeup is, I want to be happy and joyful and enjoy life, and do fun things. So they learn to suppress those things. They don't know that's what they're doing. They do it through avoidance. They make up stories. They blame themselves. They do all kinds of things. But what happens, that 80%, what happens in that first 6 years is we all have developed a core belief that we have about ourselves and about life. And we don't know we have it. We have no clue. And even the 20% has core beliefs that they don't know they have. You look at the 20% that produces 80% of the results. Does that mean they're happy in their marriage or life or relationships? Does that mean that they're healthy and vibrant? Does that mean that they're really happy? It doesn't. So everybody has a core belief in some capacity that holds them back in some area of their life, if not their whole life. Good example of that would be if a child grows up not getting the love and attention that they feel like they deserve. That might show up later in life as a victim in an abusive relationship. It might show up as somebody that's unhealthy and has chronic illnesses all the time, or somebody that's overweight 50, 60 pounds because they don't have a good self-image. They don't think anybody loves me anyway. So what's the difference? It may show up, they may do a flip. It may show up, they get angry because they didn't get the love and attention. They become the abuser. So there's all kinds of things that happen in the mind, and it's all because of that core belief, and nobody knows they have it. So when I discovered that 35 years ago, I thought, wow, that's the problem. But what's the solution? So I came up with two things, which I've been applying for myself and with people I work with. How do you help somebody discover what their core belief is? And how do you take the emotional attachment off of it so it becomes one of those files in your brain that has no emotion attached? And it's really, really gratifying work, and that happened in one day. And people say, well, you can't turn your life around that fast. I'm going, well, yes, you can. The night I said, I'll go to that meeting with you for the beer, turn my life around. When I met Jim Rohn the first time, it turned my life around. When we ended up in business, it turned my life around. When I discovered this 35 years ago, it's turned hundreds of thousands of people's lives around, including my own. So anyway, that's the problem. And that's the solution. And some people, through experience, and maybe some people have a near-death experience even, and it kind of erases everything and they start over. I don't know how that works exactly, but it's just like they put all of that stuff aside. But so many people are carrying stuff around. I'll give you one example real quick, and I'll turn it back to you. There was a woman in one of my classes recently, and we were discussing different things, but this topic was about financial success and business success. And she says, well, I can never be successful because in business or financially. And I said, why not? She said, well, my father. I said, well, what about your father? She said, well, from the time I can remember, when I was 2 years old, she said, he used to push me around. He would abuse me. He would just knock me sideways and tell me I'd never amount to anything. He didn't like me. He didn't love me. And she said, I never knew why. I had 2 siblings. He didn't treat them that way. And she said, this happened all the way through up until I left home at 18 years old. And it got even worse. You'd say, you'll never measure up to your siblings. You'll never be successful in business or in life. You're worthless. And she said he just kept that verbal abuse up for 18 years. And she said, I never knew why. I said, so that's the reason you can't be successful. She said, yes. I said, well, where's your father now? She said, well, he died 10 years ago. I said, well, who's abusing you now?
Mhm.
She said, I don't understand the question. I said, well, your father's not here. So who's abusing you now? She
Yeah.
said, I still don't understand the question. I said, well, you think about it for a little bit. So I went around to some other people in the class, I worked with them a little bit. And I came back in about 15 minutes and I said, did you come up with the answer? No. Came back in about another 15 minutes. I said, did you come up with the answer? No. And the third time back, I said, you come up with the answer. She said, I don't know. She said, do you mean I'm abusing me? I said, what do you think?
Bingo.
And she said, I don't know. I said, well, think about it some more. I came back a fourth time and I got about 10 feet away and she went, oh my God. She said, I'm abusing me. I'm carrying on his legacy. She said, he's gone and I'm still carrying it on. She said, oh my God, I can't believe I would never have thought of this. And she just went on and on. She was in tears. She was excited. She was happy. She was crying. She was all of this at one time. And it was amazing. In 5 minutes, I would guess she's probably around 50 years old or so. In 5 minutes, 10 to 15 years dropped off of her face. And people could see it. I mean, it's almost like you could see it in real time, her getting younger. And now she started the business and it's working out very, very well for her. So,
Wow.
that's the core beliefs that we carry around,
Yeah.
and we don't know we have them.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's it's so simple in one sense. I've helped a couple of hundred women at least get out of abusive relationships because from my perspective, it's very simple. But if you're in it, it's not so simple.
Mhm.
And if you do get out, if you don't address that core belief, you'll go right back into another. Just like if you make money and lose money or can't make money, you'll continue that pattern for the rest of your life until you discover what's truly holding you back. It's not the event that you need. There's nothing wrong with that. You may need it, but addressing something inside is what's going to help you use what you just gained.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Anyway,
true.
back to you.
No, thank you. Those are some incredible stories, and it's interesting. It's hard because the person that's in it truly doesn't see it. Like, you went back to her a few times, and it's like that was a new thought that you actually planted within her to start thinking about different answers. Her answer has always been my father, my father, my father. But you brought to her awareness, like, yeah, but he's not here. So who's it now? And that's what I actually love about coaching. It's like we are always in our thoughts. We believe our thoughts because they originate from us. So why wouldn't
Mhm.
we believe them? And the beauty of coaching is somebody else planting an idea for you to have some sort of an interrupt of your internal dialogue and start
Mhm.
seeking out different questions so that you can start getting different answers. Someone who I really adore, Ed Milet, I'm sure you know him. He says something in his book, The Power of One More. He said, children operate out of their curiosity and imagination, whereas adults operate out of their history and their memory. And when you think about it, so much of what we believe is a result of what we remember, right? And what we remember is the emotional charge to the things that were positive or negative. And it is so difficult to try to get out of let's change our story on what it is that we believe about the situation that happened. Like, you said she was a victim. And if I continue to say I'm a victim, well, then what? That means I don't have the solution, right? I have the problem, but I don't own the solution. And I think that's where I find, like, people like you, success coaches, performance coaches, mindset coaches, that's where that's super useful, because if you can just get someone to just turn that dial a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left, they do start seeing their worldview completely different.
Well,
Completely different.
it's becoming aware that what's aware and observant of yourself as to what's really going on when you decide, because you said all experiences are stored. They're all in your subconscious,
Mhm.
and your subconscious directs you, trying to protect you, but also it could be your greatest ally, it could be your greatest enemy. If you've tried 10 times to make $1 million a year or whatever, 10 times to lose 50 pounds. What happens is when you decide, okay, this year, this is what I'm going to do. I'm doubling my income. My business is going to double. Pops your Google, your mental Google, and it gives you the last 10 times that you failed.
Yeah.
You're already off track. You
Correct.
don't even know it unless you're aware that that's happening. And you have to, and it's so subtle and so, it's like that silent whisper in your brain that plants that little bit of doubt, because instantly you remember those things because they pop up and you've just scanned them all
Yeah.
in an instant, and you're moving ahead anyway, but you've already been pulled off track, and you already, unconsciously, you probably know it, but not consciously, that I'm not going to follow through with this anyway.
Mhm.
It's too painful, because you wait out the other painful experiences, just like a salesperson going out making calls, and they get 5 no's in a row. But the time they get to number 6, they're probably expecting a no,
Right.
and number 7 and 8, 9, 10, and they come home going, well, everybody, it was raining today and nobody wanted to talk, or whatever it is. They just, they come up with things that to justify why they didn't follow through, but they don't even know why they didn't follow through.
Yeah.
So it starts, if you want change in your life, there's really a few things that to me, if you apply these, there's no way you can't accomplish what you want. And first is a desire to change, whatever that is in your life. I mean, a true desire to have more, become more, do more, get rid of something, whatever it is that you want. Um, that desire has to be strong, and nobody can manufacture that for you. Nobody can tell you that you need that to show you how to get it. It's got to be built inside you, like that fire burning. And I think we all have that desire, but we don't take it to the next level. And the next level is the decision that we talked about earlier, a firm decision that doesn't allow for anything less. When I hear somebody say, I'm 150% committed, I no, you're not. You're either committed or you're not committed. There's no 99 or 101. There's just commitment. That's it.
Black or
And
white.
and commitment to me, it means it's what you draw upon when the going gets tough.
Mhm.
Without that, you've got that hole in that opening in your decision, and you got an excuse.
Mm.
Um, so a decision creates a mindset, and I know that's your specialty. A mindset determines how you show up
Yes.
to the world,
Yeah.
and it also determines how the world shows up to support you.
Mm.
People say, well, i'm I'm manifesting, I'm visualizing and manifesting. Well, what are you manifesting? What we manifest is what we go create, and what we create is based upon the decision and the view we have of the world. It's not the law of attraction that brings things to you, it's the law of creation, because when you decide something, your view changes. You see opportunities you never see before.
Yes.
If you want to become a millionaire and you don't have the opportunity, once you decide, people say, well, I'll go find an opportunity first. No, decide first. The opportunity will show up in your view. People say, well, there's not that many ways to make money. I'm going, well, look around the room you're in.
Mhm.
Everything pretty much in this room, this cup, probably somebody made $1 million. Certainly this cell phone, they made billions probably. The microphone, the computer, the drywall, the picture frames, the light bulbs. I have a friend that owns a light bulb company. He makes about 12 million a year selling light bulbs of all things. Well, pretty much everybody uses them, and the carpet on the floor and the desk I'm behind and all of that stuff. I mean, it's like somebody created it up here first and made a decision and they did it. Look
Yeah.
at the Wright brothers, and I can't even imagine trying to, get that little plane off the ground. And now you see planes that I was on one going to Dubai recently that held 785 passengers plus like 30 or 40 crew members, 3 levels deep.
Wow.
The wingspan was 30 feet shy of the length of a football field.
Holy
And the
smokes.
length of the plane was 30, it was square. Length of the plane was 30 feet shy of the length of a football field. When I
Okay.
looked out the window and saw that wing, I'm going, is that attached to this plane? I've never been on one that big. I can't remember what it was. It's 780 or some Airbus or something, but 3 levels.
Oh,
Unbelievable. And from where it started, well, somebody had the vision to do that. Somebody had the vision to shoot off a rocket someplace and travel around the earth. So a decision comes first, then the answers.
mhm.
And but once you make a decision, you're always faced with obstacles. Most of them are mental, sometimes not, but most often it is. It may be an obstacle that you don't mentally know how to get around, but there's always an answer. If you don't have it, somebody else does.
Yeah.
So, but when you hit obstacles, um, that's when the fears pop up. That's when the doubt comes in. And I have a program called The Power of Letting Go. And I developed this 35 years ago. And it's a pretty extensive program. It's an audio series that's 16 over 16 hours long.
Oh, wow.
And it addresses every area of anybody's life that's not working. Um, and I call it the power of letting go because that's where your power comes in. When you hang on to stuff that's not working, when you let your subconscious take over and run your life for you, that's when you lose your power. When
Mhm.
you learn to let go of those obstacles, those thought processes, thinking doesn't take us in any direction. It's the thinking that we give attention to. And
Yes.
we have to become observant to what we're doing, not just aware, but observant, catching ourselves thinking a certain way or doing a certain thing or focusing on something or allowing something to distract us and move us off course. So, um, so learning to let go is probably the most important part of success at anything in your life.
Mm.
Learning to let go. People say, well, that's hard. Letting go is hard. Going, it's simple. And if I pick up this mouse, does that mean I have to hold this in my hand for the rest of my life? You say, well, that's ridiculous. No, exactly.
It's true. And it's like,
And you
yeah.
don't have to hang on to that emotional experience that you had from the past that you're carrying into the present.
Yeah.
Is it real in the present? I'm telling you, it's more real in the present than it was in the past because you brought it in so many times, you let it grow in strength. So you got to look at that and say, no, I'm going to lay it down and not give attention to that anymore. And eventually it will wither away from lack of attention.
Yeah.
Um, so there's power in letting go.
Yeah.
And then you got to continue to take action. You got to continue to move forward. Um, and because every action you take once you've decided what you want is moving you toward what you want or away from it.
Mm.
Success in anything is really that simple.
Yeah.
If you're hanging on to something, is that moving you toward what you want or away from
Mm.
it? It's that simple. So once you've decided, if you haven't decided, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Um,
And it's
you've already
interesting
ended up.
that you said that, like, she says that letting go is hard. Well, in my experience, I feel like holding on to something that's really not serving you or your future, it's actually harder. to hold
Oh,
on.
way, way harder. You're right.
Harboring those emotions, and it's eating up at you, and you're having these thoughts, and they're recurring thoughts, and you're having circular thoughts, and it's like we keep thinking the same thing and nothing changes other than we keep feeling bad about it, or we feel bad about ourselves, or maybe we're upset with someone and we can't seem to let go of the resentment. And the amount of energy that it takes to hold on to something is so much more than the energy that you're actually going to get back if you just let it go, to allow something else, something better to come back into your awareness. You know,
You know why people hang on?
why do people hang on?
So they have an excuse for not moving forward.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. You know, it's all based in fear. Um, and when you let go of that thing that you think is holding you back, now it's just you,
Yeah.
and you can no longer use that as an excuse. So
Anchor.
that's where your power comes in. I mean, I think I never realized, I never thought about it. I thought that, you know, heck, I go do an event, I get a standing ovation, I did a great job. But that's not really true, because you can entertain people and get a standing ovation. You make them laugh, make them cry, you know, get a standing ovation, but that doesn't mean they're going to use what you've given them. So it's just becoming more observant, and self-observation is way above self-awareness. Self-observation is catching yourself doing it, catching yourself in the act.
Yes.
And sometimes you'll catch yourself after the act. And but that's okay. Don't beat yourself up for it. Say, well, I just did it again. Oh my gosh, I'm so bad. I'm so terrible. No, don't do that. Just say, I caught myself after the fact. And if you keep being observant of yourself and your actions and what you take, or what actions you take, um, pretty soon you'll catch yourself in the middle of it. In
Mm.
practice, you'll catch yourself before you get into it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's real power when you do that. But it
I
takes time sometimes. And I've had people, and myself included, that you find something that you've been hanging on to for years, and you just make a decision, that's, I'm done with that.
Yeah.
But others need a little time to maybe work through it and make that decision a little slower.
Yeah.
But I can guarantee you one thing: I don't want you to believe me that this works. Just try it and see what happens. It works the first time. It works the very first time you use
I
it.
I believe it. You know, it's funny because it's like, I love what you said with respect to like awareness is one thing, but being an observer is definitely another thing. Because I remember like for years, like I'm a single parent and I have 4 kids. And like for years, the mornings I struggled with getting them off to school and getting everybody on the bus on time. And that was the worst part of my day because I felt so out of control, right? Like they're off, misbehaving and things are flying. And like it was just so chaotic. And I remember the anxiety that would come over me in the morning, even just like as they were getting out of bed, nothing's happened, but I'm already like starting to feel it. And then, years later, after doing a professional search coaching certification, I start to understand myself better. Actually, I love the fact that I did a certification because it really helped me understand me a lot more. And I
Yeah.
realized like I was almost addicted to the emotions that I'm familiar with. Like this is the time where my heart rate starts going up. This is the time when thoughts start coming in my mind, like it's going to be another bad morning. It's going. And now it's like when things are about to go crazy or things are going to get out of hand, it's like it's almost as if I'm standing on top of myself thinking like, all right, are you ready? It's about to happen. How are you going to control this? And it's like almost me coaching me in my mind so that it's like I'm telling myself what I'm about to anticipate and also reminding myself, am I going to react to what they just did? Am I going to respond? And what can I do to get ahead of that? So that my emotions stay in check while all of their emotions are going crazy. Like, how do I stay in my center so that I can be the parent, I can be the role model? And that took years. That took years. But the power of being the observer, when you said that, it reminded me like how much I'm so much more in control of when there's chaos all around me. I can still find peace within me to be able to kind of weather that storm.
And you're going to look back one day on that, all of that chaos and remember how cool it was.
Yeah, probably because
Really, I mean,
it's
you
true.
look back at your kids and you remember them. I've got six boys, so
Wow.
well, we have four. I have two from my first marriage, but especially the last four, raising them all at one time, and all of them are just different personalities. One of them gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning to finish his schoolwork before 9, so he's free for the day. The other one gets up at 5 minutes till 9 to start his schoolwork. We homeschooled him to start his schoolwork, and he's still working on it at 10 o'clock at night. And the other one's running down the hallway, sliding back and forth and doing flips and stuff like that. And the other one is very conservative, and it's but you remember all of that stuff, and it was just part of at the time it's chaotic, but
Yeah.
at the same time, if you look at kids and what they're just trying to learn things and do things and act out and be who they are and all kinds of stuff. So looking back on it, all my kids are grown now, but looking back on it, some days you wish you still had that. You know, it's very
True.
cool.
And they say that
So,
like, oh, it goes by fast, the days are long and the years are short, and you don't believe it until it happens to you. And then it's like,
yeah, I
oh,
look now, my youngest is 30 and
oh,
he's still trying to find the perfect mate for himself. He just doesn't want to just go date a bunch of people. He just wants to find that perfect mate.
oh,
And I keep telling him he will, it'll come to you at the right time.
oh,
Mine
absolutely.
didn't come I've been married 41 years now, so it took a while for mine to get there. A perfect one.
And I
And
think
sometimes it's letting go of the need to have that, and it comes into your life. That's exactly what happened to me.
you said it.
But,
Said it.
so before we wrap up, I want to I want to leave the you and the audience here with something that I think is the foundation for everything, and it's something that it happened probably shortly after I discovered, that 80-20 rule and what happens, maybe a year after that. And a friend of mine and we used to read some similar books or read the same book sometimes. And then we'd get on the phone and talk to each other about what we read. And he called me one day and he was, we're reading this book called The Impersonal Life, which is a pretty cool little book. And he called me up and he said, would you read page 87 real quick and let's discuss it? And I said, okay. So I picked up the book, read the page, and then we discussed it for over an hour because he was kind of stuck on it. And, we learned from each other. And so it was a very kind of spiritually oriented book. And so we came up with some solutions and some opinions that we had. And just before we hung up, he said, hey, Jim, he said, what do you think the word resourceful means? And I said, never really thought about it. I said, maybe using your imagination or being more productive. Said, I don't know. Never really thought about it. I said, why? He said, well, it's just an interesting word. And I go, yeah, I guess so. That was it. And we hung up. And a few hours later, I was on my way home from the office and I couldn't quit thinking about that word, resourceful. It just kept ringing in my head. I'm going, what's up with that? And I get home and of course, this is before the internet or social or anything, you couldn't Google anything. So I go to the dictionary and I look up the word resourceful. And it's defined as once again full of source, resourceful, once again full of source. I thought, that's pretty interesting, depending on what you think source means. So I looked up the word source. Had a simple definition. It said where all things originate. All things. I thought, wow, depending on what you think source is. That could be pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And so the next day I went to the bookstore to pick up some books, and I went to an origin of words, a book on the origin of words, couldn't find it. I went to another dictionary, had the same definition, went to another dictionary, had a couple little other definitions, but still the same thing. And kind of became obsessed, I don't even know why, of continuing to look for the meaning behind that word. And this went on for about a year and a half or so. And I was in the UK, in a little town called Chester. And I was doing an event. I went out for a break on a 2-hour lunch, and I was just taking a walk and walking down the sidewalk, enjoying a little village. And I see a sign on the back door of a building that said antique books. I thought, I think I'll go in there. I love old books, and I know they have older books here than we have in the US. So I walked in the back door, and what I see first was a dictionary, looked like it was about a foot thick. It was all tattered and torn around the edges. And I wish I'd looked up the publication date, but I didn't. And it had a sign on it that said, "Do not open." And I thought that has to be just for the people in the UK. So I decided I would open it. And I guess I was prepared to buy it if I ruined it. I don't know, but I don't know what the price was. So I carefully opened it to the S's, and the pages were very brown looking, so it was old. And so I went to the S's and I found the word source. And at first I saw the same definition. Then all of a sudden there was one that just kind of popped off the page. It said source, love. I went, wow, once again, full of love. I thought, wow, that's interesting. Resourcefulness is once again full of love. I thought, how does that apply to your life? And I thought about it for a while and went out for a walk and continued and kept thinking about that. I thought, when you make a decision to do something that doesn't allow for anything less than that, you actually fall in love with it. You fall in love with it. And I thought, wow, that's powerful. And the more I thought about that, I thought, wow, that is really amazing. That's real power when you fall in love with it. Then I thought, wait a minute. If all things originate in source, where does fear come from? If all things originate in love, where does fear come from?
From love.
I thought about that for about 15 minutes, walking along and going, doesn't make any sense. There's something wrong with this definition. And finally it hit me. I thought, we fall in love with fear. We create it out of love because all things originate in love. So we fall in love with fear instead of what we actually fell in love with in the beginning. We change our love to fear instead of the decision we made. And I thought, wow, that's really powerful. And then when I left there and I flew to Toronto for an event, and interesting enough, the guy that was hosting the event and speaking with me was the one that asked me what resourceful meant. And so we're out for a walk in mid break for a couple of hours. So we walked down Yonge Street, kind of a touristy area, and a lot of people on the sidewalks. And we get out maybe a couple of miles or so. And suddenly he goes, "Hey, we need to get back. We're going to be late." And I said, "Well, they can't start without us." So, because we're the speaker. So we're hoofing it back. I'm 6'4", he's like 6'2", and we're walking pretty fast as we could walk. And occasionally had to stop for a light or traffic. And suddenly I'm walking as fast as I could walk, and I feel this presence right over my shoulder. Literally, and I could see him in my peripheral vision. I'm looking straight ahead. I could see him right there. So that's how close he was, walking in step with me. And I could smell him. It wasn't a great smell, and so I was about to turn around and go, hey, buddy, back off just a little bit. Yeah. was going to be nice to him, but I just, get off my shoulder.
Yeah.
And just before I turned around, he started talking to himself in two different voices. And the first sentence he said was, "And God created man." And the other voice said, "I know that." He said, "But then God created woman." He said, "Yeah, I know that too." He said, "But then God created fruit." And the other voice goes, "Well, what does fruit have to do with anything?" He said, "Well, inside the fruit, there's a seed." And he said, "If you plant it, it will grow." And
Mhm.
he said, "If you don't, it won't."
Mhm.
And he turned and went the other way. So I took that conversation out of what I just learned in the UK. And I thought, when you make a decision, you plant a seed.
Yeah.
And if you don't plant it in a firm decision 100%, it won't grow. And the other part of that, if you plant a seed, if you don't keep the weeds out, it will die. If you don't nourish it with love and affection and the right nutrients and water it and take the weeds out, it'll die.
Yeah.
And in life, it dies because of the fears. That's our weeds, our mental weeds. It's like the story, the guy's walking down the street and he sees a guy with a beautiful garden. And he said, "Wow." He said, "You and God have a great garden, a beautiful garden here." And the guy with the garden said, "Yeah, you should have seen it when God had it by himself."
And it's interesting,
So
Jim.
true.
It's so super true. And like when you say like, you need to keep out those weeds, it's like, yeah, those weeds are our fears. Those weeds are our limiting beliefs, our negative thoughts, our stories that are so
Yep.
disempowering, right? Those are, they serve their place in one point in our life, but they don't serve their place today. They don't have place today. And the watering and the nourishing, that's also like you got to do something to let that grow. You got to take action. And
Yeah.
if you don't take action, you are not going to see results in your life, right? Like you have to do something with it. So not just decide, but commit and do so that you can start seeing the results. Oh my gosh, Jim, this was such a wonderful, wonderful interview. Thank you for everything that you've shared. Now, where can viewers get more of Jim Britt?
Well, you can catch me at jimbritt.com.
Okay.
If you want a couple of audios, go to poweroflettinggo.com and you can download the two free audios, the two out of my whole series I mentioned earlier. The first two, you can download those. And if you like, you might want to go to the next step and pick up the whole album. So
Love it. I
it's
love it.
it's great. And so jimbritt.com, if you want to change your your belief systems about money, go to crackingtherichcode.com. And there's a whole program there. It's a 4-month coaching program that's all virtual, but you
Okay.
get daily input, and it's all designed to change a person's relationship with money. Because the reason 90% of the population doesn't have enough to survive comfortably is because they don't have a good relationship with money. And this is designed to change your relationship. So anyway, catch me there, jimbritt.com.
I love it. Or you can catch him on LinkedIn, which is where we found one another.
Yeah. LinkedIn, I have messages up there most every day on my profile on LinkedIn. Yeah, videos. So yeah.
Perfect. Jim, thank you. Appreciate you and hope to see you next time.
All right. It's a pleasure. Thank you.